Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome into another episode of Two Peas on a Podcast. I'm so glad that you joined us again this week. And it's exciting for me because I got another first-time guest. I've had a run lately of first-time guests. I've had a couple regulars pop up here and there, but the last couple months has been a lot of first-timers. And I've been listening to this guy's show for a while, and his partner has been on a few times on the Peas, Mr. Julio. But this time around, I've got the other half of the Contrarians on the show. Alex, what's up, man? Welcome to the Peas. How you doing, brother?
I am doing well, Gerald. Thank you for having me. It's a scorching week so far in Austin, Texas, but I wouldn't rather be anywhere else than here right now discussing the topic that we're going to tackle. And I had a lot of fun prepping for this, so I'm really excited to be here. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely, man. Yeah, speaking of the topic, I like for my guests to come up with the topic whenever possible because, I've done almost 200 of these, and at a point, I just kind of go, I don't know what to do anymore. So with that being said, you did come up with the topic that we're discussing tonight. So why don't you tell everyone that's listening what we're going to be counting down tonight, and then kind of also give like your kind of definition of it.
Absolutely. So the topic I came up with was top 5 sex comedies, or Gerald kind of refined it into raunchy comedies. Definitely a genre of the 80s and 90s kids. I mean, we had a couple dipping the toe in the 70s. And even, you go back to the 50s, some of the Marilyn Monroe movies by today's standards would be considered raunchy, or by those standards, excuse me. So, but definitely kind of similar to the slasher movies that I'm a big fan of. Sex comedies really peaked in the 80s and 90s and at the turn of the millennium. Those early 2000s, man, that there was the type of movies that to people who weren't alive during that time or weren't of a certain age at that time can't really appreciate their impact or even like just how funny they are.
Right. It's funny you said that because that's something I was going to mention too. It's like if you weren't around or at least of an adult age watching that shit when it came out and you watch it now, you might go, oh my God, they released this? But at the time it was, in some cases, it seemed tame, depending on where you were in your life, if you were in college or whatever. So I agree with you. It's crazy how some of these are time capsules.
Absolutely. I'm assuming if your list is anything like mine, there'll be a couple where I have to say, yeah, this part of it probably wouldn't play too well today, but at the time it
Right.
was, it was
Yeah.
funny. But similar to slasher movies, they're a genre that I have kind of an affinity for. I mean, I was 14 when Jackass was at its zenith. I was 13 kind of when Tom Green was doing his thing. And so it's of that generation, we had the American Pies, the Saving Silvermans. I mean, we are a generation of Jason Biggs. We have knowledge of who Jason Biggs is.
Yeah.
And that right there like paints the picture you need to know.
Yeah, that should tell you a thing or two right there. Yeah, for sure. Well, let me ask you though. So, because you said sex comedies, which I get it. I knew exactly what you were talking about when you pitched it to me. I kind of narrowed it down to raunchy comedies. Now, when you were coming up with your list, when you were compiling your top 5, what was the criteria that had to exist for it to make the cut for you? Was there any specific like part of the narrative that had to apply?
Yes. So number one, sex comedy, raunchy comedy. When we're talking about the best of the best, number one, you got to have an R rating. I know a lot of people when they hear, raunchy comedy, teen comedy, that type of thing. A lot of people throw out Can't Hardly Wait or Saving Silverman, both amazing movies in their own right, but they don't qualify for my specific criteria. You got to have the hard R rating because that's really what pushes the bounds of it. There has to be a character in the movie who's motivated, like their sole purpose driven forward is to get laid in some capacity. That's something I always look for in these movies. And little things that don't hurt are the raunchy sidekick, the really crass sidekick. That always helps as well.
Sure.
But it's really just about the sex driven, the hard R, and most importantly, the centerpiece of any good raunchy comedy, or as I call them sex comedy. I think we can just use those terms interchangeably. The soundtrack. The soundtrack plays an enormous part in these, and that's something Hula and I have talked about on the Contrarians several times. Is the whole art of the soundtrack seems to have been completely lost in the past 15 years,
Right.
and that these teen comedies, because they were all about also marketing these music towards the people that are going to see them, had like they're also time capsules in that aspect. The
Right.
music in them a lot of times is indicative of the era. The
That's
best ones, though, as we'll talk about, they kind of reach out. But yeah, that's kind of my criteria for it.
Well, I'm kind of in line with you then, and I was a little concerned if we would take the same approach. But yeah, for me, I didn't really think about the rating, but I just pulled my list up, and I have 5 honorables as well, and all 10 of mine are rated R. So
Mhm.
luckily, I did meet that criteria too, kind of inadvertently, but still, I did meet that criteria. But yeah, for me, it was just like, is sex or getting laid at the center of the narrative? Is it like
Mhm.
part of what's driving the plot forward? Is it one or maybe multiple characters that are trying to get laid? And
Yeah.
if that's the plot of the movie, then to me it's a sex comedy or a raunchy comedy. Obviously, when you throw in the dick jokes and the crass humor, then that just kind of adds to that element as well. And there's a lot of that mixed in throughout my list too. So I think you and I are pretty much on the same page. Now, with that being said, now how old are you? I'm going to be 46 this year. How old are you?
I just turned 34, so I guess there will be a little bit of a differential.
So what do you think, without giving away any titles, what do you think for crossover? You think we'll have a lot of crossover or a couple?
I Yeah, I think there's one that is so ubiquitous by everyone's standards that I would be surprised if we didn't both have it somewhere in our top 10.
Sometimes I get crazy and I leave those off though. So
I, I do too,
I do
but
that
like
sometimes.
it was one I looked at and I'm like, there's just no way. Like people would take the contrarian thing. They would think I've taken it too far to not include it, so I had to.
All right, well, we'll see what you're going to do then, man. I'm going to let you get us started, Alex. What is your number 5 raunchy sex comedy?
So real quick, I had a disclaimer to throw out there, and that is that I view Knocked Up and Forgetting Sarah Marshall as romantic comedies, and a lot of
Mm,
people throw those in the raunchy comedy. And anyone who's talked to me, and like I know Julio will listen to this, he knows how much I love Knocked Up. So not going to be in there. Just wanted to throw that out to get us started.
all right,
But
interesting. Interesting. Okay.
so number 5 is going to take us back to 1996. And the future Academy Award winner Peter Farley. We're going with Woody Harrelson and Randy Quaid in Kingpin.
Oh, good one, man. I haven't seen this in forever, dude. Talk a little bit about this one. It's a great pick.
So Fairley Brothers definitely hit their stride in the 90s. Dumb and Dumber is, timeless by the standards of anyone raised in the 90s, but Kingpin hits so many good beats of that era in that, you have Vanessa Angel, who's I wouldn't really call her heroine, but she's the object of the desire in it.
Hmm.
Blonde hair, big chest. Her acting it varies in range on that in the movie, but it's exactly what it needs to be. You have Rob Moran, who's like a perennial that guy from the '90s, who plays the bad guy in it,
Right.
and then Woody Harrelson and Randy Quaid. The comedy in this movie is it ranges from blatantly raunchy and funny to just kind of lines that 5 minutes later make you laugh. There's a part in it. Woody Harrelson's character's name is Roy Munson, and they're staying at a hotel outside of Reno or some shit, and he's like flossing in the mirror, and Randy Quaid goes, "What are you doing?" And he goes, "Flossing." He goes, "Flossing? Where the hell did I get Munson?" It's just lines like that that are so stupid and make me laugh.
Right.
Uh,
Yeah.
but the big thing, like I said, the soundtrack in this, you've got ELO Showdown, Disco Inferno, and then music of the time. You have Superman by Goldfinger playing in it.
Hmm. Hmm.
Uh, it's one of those I've rewatched in later years and just it kind of flies under the radar in terms of how good the acting in it too is. Like Woody Harrelson, there's scenes in it where you're like, oh yeah, he's a great actor.
Right.
And and Randy Quaid hitting his stride as a comedic actor.
Sure.
It's a good one. It's a hidden gem, I think, in a lot of aspects.
It is, and it does fly under the radar a little bit with some other, movies that are kind of comparatively like it from that era. But I love it, man. I just haven't seen it in so long. I don't have vivid memories of it, but it's a great movie, and I remember loving it so much. So that's your number 5, Kingpin. My number
Hmm.
5, man, might be a bit of a surprise, okay? But this falls into the category of what we're talking about, I believe. And I was kind of messing around with the order pretty much all day today, and I didn't know what I was going to settle on. And this one finally ended up falling at my number 5. But I also love it for kind of its revolutionary, kind of groundbreaking, kind of change to the genre. Now, it came much later because it's from 2011, but it's Bridesmaids is my number 5.
Academy
Now,
Award nominated.
Academy Award nominated Bridesmaids. But this is an all-female Well, mostly an all-female cast. At least the main players are all female, and we have a very similar kind of like I don't want to give away any titles that might come up on your list, but like the Hangover type movies where it's these dudes just kind of living it up on a vacation, or in that particular case in Vegas or whatever. And we see that narrative play out so many times. I mean, you mentioned the 70s and 80s and 90s. It was like, I mean, there's probably 100,000 movies that follow a very similar plot to Bridesmaids, but it's all dudes. So here we have these women who are empowering. I mean, I love Kristen Wiig coming off of her Saturday Night Live fame, and she's so good in this, man, such a darling. And she's the one that's trying to get laid in Bridesmaids. She's the one that's kind of down on her luck.
Yeah.
And she falls for the Irish actor. I can't remember his name for some reason right now.
Chris O'Dowd.
Chris O'Dowd, that's right. And she falls for him. He's a cop in their town, and so it's kind of like told through her lens a little bit. But I also love Rose Byrne, and she's found her match, and she's getting married. So it also becomes this really cool tale of friendship between these main girls. And the world got introduced to Melissa McCarthy in this role. I mean, she freaking some of the best physical comedy that you'll see is her in this movie in Bridesmaids. So yeah, I love it. A lot of Maya Rudolph. I mean, just a lot of female actresses that I love so much. And I love how it kind of flipped the genre on its side a little bit, because we're going to be talking about a lot that, it kind of took that formula, but it told it from a female perspective, which I really thought was fresh and innovative. And I love this movie, so it's my number 5. What do you think of this one, man?
I think one of the things from the female perspective, something that's always tickled me about the Bridesmaids is Tim Heidecker's in it and doesn't have one line. So, you kind of have, I don't want to say he's like a mainstream comedian by any aspect, but you have someone that people know for being so loud and just extremely animated. And so to have him like in such a restrained position, I thought that was kind of ingenious casting.
Yeah.
I've gone back and forth on Bridesmaids a lot. I really liked it when it came out. I saw it again and I was like, it wasn't that good. And then I saw it again, and the dynamic between Rose Byrne and Kristen Wiig is just awesome.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's something that when the movie first came out and I was in my early 20s versus watching it in my early 30s, I relate to the dynamic between those two so much more, having more life experience and whatnot.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it's a really good blend of good storytelling, good acting, still mixing in. I mean, there's scat humor and shit throughout it, so it definitely hits a fine balance of it.
Yeah,
and it's hilarious. It got nominated for Best Original Screenplay.
Right, yeah. I mean, there's a scene where, Maya Rudolph takes a shit in the street, so in a wedding dress. I mean, what are you going to do? Yeah, so Bridesmaids, my number 5, and we're back over to you for your 4, man. What do you got?
Number 4, no way I could not include this. It is the 2007, I believe Greg Mottola directed this, Superbad, starring Jonah Hill and Michael Cera.
Mm-hmm.
This movie, I was dead center in the middle of my run of college when this movie came out. And I actually got to go to an advanced screening that Paramount housed at one of the local movie theaters.
Okay.
It was, we had a theater there called the Movie Tavern, which was basically like a mom and pop version of the Draft House. In terms of, it was just like the only one in the area, and you can just go there and drink and watch movies. And Paramount housed an advanced screening, I think 2 months before it came out. And 2007 was also right before phones became more than just texting and calling. Right. So it was still that time period where no one was on their phone, and just seeing it in a sold out theater of like people my age and just people, legitimately losing it, throwing popcorn up in the air out of laughter. It's a very cherished memory I have. With all that being said, this movie is still just fucking hilarious. And to me, one of like the definite pinnacles of the genre, and also kind of with that Bridesmaids vein of kind of the last of its kind before, and I'm not saying this is a bad thing at all, but the whole being more aware of how certain people can interpret dialogue you have in a movie and stuff like that. Because there's definitely lines in Superbad that wouldn't play today. But Jonah Hill, Michael Cera, their dynamic is just phenomenal. Jonah Hill is at his most obnoxious best. I mean,
he's so good. Yeah. This
movie introduced us to Fogel. I can't remember his full name, but it's a threefer. He's got the threefer name. And
are you talking about Christopher Mintz-Plasse?
There we go. Yeah. And I mean, he went on to do other things, but it's like such an iconic role
Oh
that
yeah,
everyone just sees him as McLovin.
he's McLovin forever. Yeah, I like when he's like, well, you look like Aladdin, when he's wearing the vest or whatever. Just shit
That's
like
the one
that.
that that's the one that got all the play on like the TV spots and shit. But with the follow up, when Jonah Hill scampers off, and then Michael Cera turns to him, he's like, "Seriously, take off the vest. You look like no. Jonah Hill says you look like Pinocchio."
Yeah, it's good, man. And then they're getting ready later, and I think it's Jonah Hill is like, or no, it's Michael Cera was like, nobody's gotten a hand job in cargo shorts since Nam.
Yeah, there's so many little touches in that. Like Michael Cera, when they're getting ready, is playing the getaway, and he just throws the controller down. He's like, "Why would they make a game if you can't beat it?" And I remember how hard that game was, so
Yeah, yeah,
that was great.
yeah.
And I mean, we got Emma Stone. It was one of the first big introductions to Bill Hader on a big scale like that, and
Yeah, yeah. Him and Seth Rogen were gold together in that movie, man.
absolutely.
Yeah,
And like I said, I got to bring it back to also the soundtrack. You had Marvin Gaye in there. You had Stranglehold by Ted Nugent. You had Big Papa by Biggie. I
Van
mean,
Halen, Panama.
Van Halen.
Yeah,
That was in the trailer. I forgot. That's the one
yeah.
I forgot about. But
That's good
and
shit,
then
man.
also being the undeclared mark that I am, seeing Carla Gallo in it made me happy.
Oh yeah, for sure. All right, so Superbad's a great pick, man. It's actually one that I considered, but it barely missed the cut for my list. But you're right, man. That movie's so hilarious, and anytime I watch it, I literally laugh, even though I know every joke that's coming. So it's just a great movie, man. Now, my number 4 is another one that falls in that category where I can't get enough of this movie. I've seen it probably 50 times, and I literally laugh my ass off every single time, especially at certain scenes. It's definitely raunchy. It's definitely got that sex drive at the center of the two main characters in the film. And one of these actors just tends to pop up in a lot of these types of movies, and I'm going to actually be mentioning him a little bit later too. But it's 2005's Wedding Crashers with Vince Vaughn and Owen Wilson. God damn, man. This movie cracks me up. I've mentioned this movie many times on my show before, actually, but the scene where he's getting jerked off under the table is like, I mean,
it feels so good when he makes us laugh.
there is no way I can watch that scene without just dying in laughter. It is so funny the way Vince Vaughn sells it. It's just tremendous physical acting, and it's written so well, too. You've got supporting roles in here for some icons like Jane Seymour, Christopher Walken. We kind of get introduced in a roundabout way to Bradley Cooper in this movie as Sack, kind of the villain of the movie. Rebecca De Mornay is in here. She had a big place in my heart in the 80s, of course. But yeah, it's a great movie, man, and I heard they're doing a sequel, so I'm kind of excited for that. I mean, you think a sequel, 20 years removed from the original might not be a good idea, but I don't know. If the humor's the same, I say let's do it. Let's bring it on, because I love Vince Vaughn. I've always been such a huge fan of his. He cracks me up, and I've come around to Owen Wilson, too, and the two of them together I feel like is just undefeated, man. It's just it's one of my favorite comedies, period, but it definitely falls in this category. It's one of my favorites, too, so... Wedding Crashers for me is my number 4. What do you think, man?
It's a great one. It just barely missed the cut. Rachel McAdams reminds everyone that she's like a generational talent in that movie, because it's a comedy, but she still is just impeccable in everything she does. Yeah, Christopher Walken's great. The scene in that movie that I quote the most is Will Ferrell's cameo. I got her at a funeral yesterday. Her boyfriend died in a hang gliding accident. What an idiot.
Yeah.
You mentioned Owen Wilson, though. It's such a stupid throwaway joke, but it's my favorite joke in that movie, of the montage where everyone's like, his life's in disarray, and it's the voiceover of Vince Vaughn calling him, and he gets his voicemail. He's like, "This is John, whatever."
Yeah, right. Yeah. It's good, man. It's a story of friendship, but you got the dick humor, you got the like sex jokes, and then obviously they're hitting these weddings trying to get laid. I mean, that's the whole premise of the movie. And what happens when you end up falling in love with one of these targets, And I mean, if it's Rachel McAdams, of course you're falling in love with her. I mean, who wouldn't? So
it's evidence of what those movies can be when you have a cast of extremely talented actors and actresses.
Yeah, no doubt. All right, man. So Wedding Crashers for me falls at my 4, which swings us back over to you, Alex, for your 3. What do you got, buddy?
Okay, so keeping, I guess, kind of on the constant of Wedding Crashers there, we're bringing Isla Fisher into the picture more at the forefront, which would be 2012's Bachelorette, which this is a movie that I am just crazy about. We did a patron episode for this. The reason we didn't do it for our show proper, we kind of something we do on our show is just about the premises of movies, and there's certain aspects to the plot of this that I told Julio, I was like, I'm not really comfortable like joking about bulimia or anything, eating disorders and stuff like that. So let's just save this for when we can just do like our real thoughts on it.
Mm-hmm.
Bachelorette is incredible. It's unfortunately, it was very quickly just said that it was them trying to make a female Hangover because it's a three-piece. It's Kirsten Dunst, Isla Fisher, and Lizzie Kaplan.
Wow, I love
honestly,
all those actresses. I hate to interrupt you. I love all those actresses. I feel like I vaguely like remember hearing about this movie, but I don't think I've ever seen this. I don't think, but talk about it a little bit. I don't think I've seen it.
Yeah, so it was by a one-time director, if I'm not mistaken, Leslie Headland, who it was based on a play she wrote. And so it's a completely female-guided vehicle. There is just the similarity of it's these three women getting together. They're going to see their best friend get married. Their best friend is played by Rebel Wilson.
Okay.
And it's basically the three of them are just in all these different parts of their lives. There's some heavy shit in this movie. There's some heavy monologues, some really, really heavy scenarios. James Marsden's in it, who is probably the most unsung hero of the raunchy comedy genre, having really only this and Sex Drive to his name, but he is just phenomenal in both of these.
Mm-hmm.
You got Adam Scott in there. It's a very touching movie, and it turns a lot of the kind of what we were talking about with Bridesmaids, a lot of the stereotypical tropes for these movies on their head, because the character who's looking to get laid is Lizzie Kaplan. She's on the prowl, and it's I try not to give too much about it away when I present it to someone because it's 90 minutes. It's really easy to watch, but it's super underrated.
I need to watch this. Did you ever see the Star series Party Down, by the way, with Lizzie Kaplan?
Party Down is phenomenal.
Oh, I fucking love that show, man. Yeah, she's always been one of my favorites. She was in True Blood too on HBO. But Kirsten Dunst, I've always been a huge fan of. I love her. She's one of my favorite actresses. I don't know why I haven't seen this, but I do feel like I've heard about it or I've seen the poster or something like that. I guess maybe it was under marketed. Was that fair to say?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Oh, absolutely. It was one of those two. It just seemed like everyone wrote it off so quickly as just, it's a Hangover clone that I don't even think it got much of a theatrical release. But yeah, it's I think you can rent it online. It might be streaming somewhere.
I will be watching that, Alex, because I can't believe I haven't seen that. I love everybody involved, and it's getting your stamp of approval too. So let's check it out. I'm going to get on it. All right. So
real quick though, I got to say the soundtrack highlight. There's a very pivotal scene set to Slide by the Goo Goo Dolls, and I've never been able to listen to that song the same again.
Wow.
So there you go.
Maybe that'll help that song for me because I'm not a huge Goo Goo Dolls fan, so maybe I'll have a reason to listen to them now. Okay, cool. Go. So it's just called Bachelorette or The Bachelorette?
Bachelorette.
Bachelorette. All right, Bachelorette. That's your number 3. My number 3, now, this is interesting because at the top you mentioned Forgetting Sarah Marshall and Knocked Up, I believe you mentioned, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I am a sucker, man, for Judd Apatow written films. Like they're too long. Almost all of them are way too fucking long. But I just love the humor. I love the wittiness because you do get the sex, like dick jokes, but they're so witty and like quirky and it's just kind of like fast off the cuff, and it's just really smart writing, I feel like, as opposed to just like, college dudes just standing there, like gawking or whatever. It's just done really well, I feel like. And one of my favorites that really introduced me to Judd Apatow was The 40-Year-Old Virgin, which also came out the same year as Wedding Crashers, by the way, 2005.
Mm-hmm.
So that's what I'm naming at my number 3. So I hope that's okay because you mentioned that at the top, but I mean, for me, Steve Carell, who obviously we love from The Office, and he went on to do many, many other things, including dramatic roles that he's gotten a lot of notoriety for, but was just cast so perfectly in the titular role of the 40-year-old virgin, of this guy that is just kind of given up because his whole life he was just failing with women. He was trying to get laid. Something would happen, and it just never happened for him. He just had the worst luck. And he, just ends up living his life as a virgin. He's working at this like Best Buy kind of place with these other really colorful characters in the movie. Seth Rogen shows up again here. Very early role for Seth Rogen, at least in movies. Jane Lynch is in there. Paul Rudd. It's a freaking like Jim and everything Catherine he's Keener. In. Yeah. So Mindy Kaling's in it. So it's got
Oh yeah.
a lot of really good like sub characters too. Kat Dennings plays the daughter. She went on
Hmm.
to fame as well. But yeah, one of my favorite things I just want to point out, and then I want to hear what you think about this movie. But one of my favorite things is so stupid. You were talking about throwaway jokes, but I literally like quote this to this day. But they were outside like behind their work, and they were like throwing like light bulbs on the ground, and they were taking the trash
Yeah.
out or whatever. And they were talking about how Steve Carell gets to work and he's like riding his bike, and Paul Rudd's like, "Chill out, man. Like a lot of people ride their bike," and he's like, "Yeah, when they're fucking 6." It's like giving him a hard time, because he rides a bike. I don't know why. Like it's the dumbest thing, but I just crack up every time. So, the 40-year-old virgin for me, man. What do you think about this one? And is this one okay with your Apatow parameters? Are you okay with this?
Yeah. Yeah, it's my little disclaimer. It wouldn't be me if I didn't have some weird little asterisk to put next to me talking about movies. But
Sure.
I mean, it's the most perfect use of Kevin Hart that's ever been captured on film. Is the
Oh
40-year-old
God,
virgin?
so good, man. That scene is hilarious.
It's so good. It's like that's one of those I regularly revisit on YouTube and just
Yeah,
like
so
when me
good.
and my dad will be talking shit to each other for any reason, we usually end it with "Aim high, Willis, aim high."
That's right. And what about there's just so many like different like one-off scenes that don't
Hmm.
apply to the rest of the movie, but that's one of them where like
Hmm.
that could have easily been cut and like the movie wouldn't have lost anything. You know what I mean? But it had to be in there. It's so funny between those two actors, and it happens again later too when Paul Rudd is having a breakdown and they're playing Michael McDonald over and over again. He's like, he's like, if I hear Michael McDonald one more time, I'm gonna come and say, yeah, I'm gonna burn this place to the ground. Oh man,
Yeah,
so good.
Paul Rudd. I mean, the whole scene too. You want to talk about throwaway lines it's easily the line I quote most from 40-year-old virgin, where he's giving his box of porn to Andy,
Right.
and then he's going through the tapes. He goes, "Everyone loves Rit." But that's just a good show. That's like I
What?
always think of it. And like Boner Jams '03. That's anyone who that's a timeless reference.
Man, so good,
Yeah.
dude, so good. So I love that movie. I've revisited it frequently, and I had to put an Apatow in here, and that was the one that kind of introduced me to his whole thing that he had going with the writing and stuff. So that's the one I decided to go with. So that's my number 3, and we're up to our runner-ups. Alex, what do you got at number 2, man?
Number 2, taking us back almost to the turn of the millennium, 2001. Um, this is kind of a weird one because it's almost a parody of the raunchy comedy, the sex comedy,
Hmm.
and that is the David Wayne directed Wet Hot American Summer.
Okay, yeah, good one.
One of my favorite comedies of all time. But like I said, it meets my criteria for this, even though it's almost like a deconstruction of the whole sex comedy. But God, you got Paul Rudd, Bradley Cooper, who has already been brought up and is also an unsung hero of this genre. Michael Showalter, who's hilarious. Um, is it Moreau? Marguerite Moreau is
Hmm.
Moreau, excuse me. She's great in this. And I mean, you got Elizabeth Banks.
Yep.
The list goes on with this. Michael Ian Black, who is
Oh
a
yeah.
favorite of mine.
Oh yeah. Uh-huh.
It's obviously an ensemble cast. Joe Latruglio, Ken Marino. It's the style of comedy in it is not for everybody, but it's the dialogue in this is so stupid and just some of the physical comedy or just interactions. There's the part in it where two of the characters just look at each other and they go secret handshake, and then they just shake hands like normal people. It's yeah, I've talked to people that love it as much as me, and I've also talked to people that whole, I think it's the trio of Showalter, Wayne, and Michael Ian Black. They're the one that kind of wrote this. That style of comedy is not for them.
Yeah.
But between the way the movie's presented, the jokes, shit, what's his name? The guy from CSI that's in this. Uh,
Can't remember.
man.
I'll let you look it up. I can edit this out later.
Christopher Maloney
Oh yeah. Okay,
is
that's right. Yep.
as Gene, insane. And it's a lot of people at that time that would have been really big too, like Molly Shannon just kind of pop up. But again, Paul Rudd, a staple.
Hmm.
And soundtrack, you have Jane by Jefferson Starship to start it off, and then they even wrote their own song for it. Taking Us Higher, I think is what it's called.
That's right. I remember that
And if you know
vaguely.
anything about the production of it, it's hilarious how low budget it was. And there's that almost shockingly graphic sex scene between Bradley Cooper and Michael Ian Black that always really takes people aback. And
Oh
just
yeah.
when I talk to people that review it and they reference that scene, I always I find it funny. So, Joel, do you find the style of comedy funny?
For Wet Hot American Summer?
Yeah, some people don't like the whole like. Some people call it anti-comedy or like I don't want to call it a parody movie because some people view that as like scary movie, date movie, which that shit is not for
Right.
me. But
That's
this,
different. Yeah, this is more
yeah,
satirical in nature. But
yeah,
yeah, no, I definitely dig it. I wasn't a huge fan of like the Netflix revival they did a couple years ago. Did you see that?
yeah, it was okay. It
It was
it
all right.
started straying way too far into the weird.
Yeah. But no, typically speaking, I do enjoy that type of filmmaking, but I definitely like this movie. I just haven't seen it in a long time. But
Mhm.
Paul Rudd and Gene cut off shorts, man. You can't go wrong. So good pick, man. Wet Hot American Summer is your runner up. My runner up is much different, and I started this list off with Bridesmaids, which was an all female cast that was kind of adult, and they were in middle age of their life. They were getting married, they were having kids. Some of them did have kids, like so on and so on. Well, this is a similar way of taking that genre and doing something new with it, but it's really the high school comedy, and it's Booksmart, which I put in my top 5 of 2019
Mm.
across all genres. I love this movie so much, man. It's you could fill in the blank with any like high school sex comedy, and if you took the two main dudes in those comedies and you replaced them with Beanie Feldstein and Caitlin Dever, you get Booksmart. And their like camaraderie and how they work so well together on camera as these BFFs who just they just want a party. They've been focused on their grades. They've been doing so well in school, but everybody else around them is partying, and there's lines in the film dropped about everyone's giving blowjobs, and like here they are in their room studying, trying to get into college, and they realize like, holy shit, like high school's over, like this part of our life's gonna be over, and we're not gonna have any partying to have
Hmm.
memories with or memories of. So I'm sure that it befalls a lot of people that are kind of like nerds or whatever you want to call it in high school, is they kind of go,
Yeah.
well, that didn't happen for me. It's over. But these two characters just decide to just have a just fucking crazy bender, Molly and Amy, and they go out and just fucking tear up the town. And it's really cool too because Amy's character is lesbian, so you have kind of the LGBT representation, which we don't see unless I'm forgetting some. I mean, I'm sure there's maybe a handful, but we don't see a lot of that in these types of movies. It's more like dudes chasing chicks or whatever, which is fine. But it's
Yeah.
also cool to, get other representation in these types of films too. And Olivia Wilde, her directorial debut, she fucking killed this, man. She's going to be directing Florence Pugh in a movie called Don't Worry, Darling coming up this year, which is going to be her second feature. I'm so excited for that because I love her style of filmmaking, and I think she just really knows how to shoot things through that female gaze really well. So yeah,
Hmm.
Booksmart. Were you a fan of this one, man? This is one of my favorites of the last couple of years.
I only saw it once. I remember really enjoying the authenticity of. It's one of the closing scenes. Forgive me for not remembering the characters' names, but the one has like her first lesbian experience in the
Amy.
bathroom. Then,
Hmm.
yeah, doesn't she end up like getting sick and puking on the girl?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Mhm.
but it's not like played for like ha ha ha. It's meant to,
Real. Yeah.
like I said, yeah, the authenticity of it is something I really appreciated. And yeah, I honestly, like I said, I just saw it the once. I remember that, and then I remember the joke of when they're in the Uber and they're trying to sync their music to it, but it just starts playing porn really loud. Um,
Yeah, yeah, that's good. Yeah, Jason Sudeikis is in here. He has a small role as the school principal. Maya Rudolph is back again. She's in this movie. Billy Lord has a great little cameo. Will Forte. So it's a great like comedic
oh
cast.
yeah, Will Forte's like Amy's dad, right?
That's right. Yeah.
Perfect.
So
Yeah.
yeah, they're great, man. Lisa Kudrow too. Yeah. So there you go. So Booksmart is my number 2. I felt like it would fit the brief, and I love that movie so much. So that's my runner up, and we are up to our number ones, Alex. I'm excited, man. No crossover, no crossover.
No,
At least as of yet. So let's see what you got at number 1, man. What do you got?
you set the table though. Like it's going to be damning of me, talking about the proper representation that's needed, and I'm going to like one of the most phallocentric sex comedies ever made.
It's okay.
Uh, we are going to 2000 for the best movie Todd Phillips has ever made, short of Hated, the story of Gigi Allen, and that is Road Trip.
Oh, there you
Uh,
go. All right.
this is a movie that a humongous part of it is a sentimental attachment I have to it, because it's one of the movies I remember being like 14 and watching for the first time on DVD, maybe VHS at that point in time. But a couple things. It is the most perfect use of Tom Green ever. He's sprinkled in this movie just very sporadically, and it hits all the points of things that Tom Green is good at and funny at, but only gives you it in like 30-second to 90-second interstitials, which I appreciate. It's all of the tropes of that turn of the millennium. You have the nerdy kid who ends up, being a ladies' man, and DJ Qualls, who can live the rest of his life off of, I think his name's Kyle in this movie.
Oh man, it's tricky.
There
So
you go.
good, man. So good.
Breckin Meyer is the lead character who, as we all do, we're unfaithful to our girlfriend and accidentally videotape it and then mail it to them.
Mm-hmm.
So they have to travel from Ithaca to Austin, Texas, and also being an Austin native. I recently rewatched this. It holds up, but the city of Austin looks a lot different in that movie than it does now. But you have Sean William Scott, who I think most people would agree for his point in time was the raunchy comedy actor, just being Stifler, and then in this and a couple of their side roles he had. But the plot is good. You have fucking Fred Ward in there just for whatever reason, and his scenes are just utter chaos to the point where he pulls out a gun in the closing of the movie. Cameos from Horatio Sands, Andy Dick. It is definitely a movie of its time, and then the soundtrack, you've got, like you mentioned, you got Tricky, I Want to Rock by Twisted Sister. There is even an original song, the Salmon song by Tom Green at one point.
Oh, yeah. I remember
and
that.
And then, of course, as a wrestling fan, something I always am just aghast at this movie was, at one point in time, professional wrestling was so popular in the United States that writers of a major Hollywood motion picture release put a line in a movie where someone was using Vince McMahon as an analogy to something. And it's always been funny to me that I've been a wrestling fan my whole life, that at one point in time wrestling was big enough that could be put in a movie, and they just expected that the audience would know what they were talking about. Whereas nowadays, of course, that's long fleeting memory. But yeah, it's great. Remember my first viewing, the DVD copy I have of it when I was in my early 20s, my cousin, who I was really close to, kind of unexpectedly passed away. And one of the things that my aunt handed down to me was a box of his stuff. And in there was the road trip DVD that he had, and we had watched together. So it's the copy of it I still have. So it's a very heavy sentimental attachment, but also it's really, really fucking funny.
Nice. I agree, man. This is one that was on my radar, but I needed to rewatch it to be authentic and putting it on my list. But I do love this movie. I just haven't seen it in a while. And it got a lot of shout outs online. It's a great pick. I think you nailed it in terms of, like, they use Tom Green correct in this movie, because he can be a little much if he's not kind of like spaced out a little bit. So, but yeah, great flick, man. Road Trip, you're number one. I didn't see that coming though, so that's cool. You surprised me there. I didn't know you loved that movie.
That's what I live to do.
Yeah, so what you're doing over there. Okay. Now, mine's already been mentioned a few times. Now, I considered almost not putting it on here because I felt like it might be too obvious, but I do have a connection to this from like a nostalgia, like personal connection to this movie too. But it's got to be 1999's American Pie. And that's my number one, man. I just couldn't get away from naming this as my number one. Now, you and I mentioned this one over in the Twitter chat a couple weeks ago when we initially decided to do the topic. We've already mentioned it 2 or 3 times on this episode. I feel like whether you love this movie or the series or whatever, you have to recognize that this is a pillar of this, genre. If it's its own genre, American Pie is definitely one of the foundation pieces. Is that fair to say, Alex?
Absolutely. Eugene Levy's still cashing checks from this.
Oh my God, man, he is so fucking good in this. It's just Jim's dad. That's all he's credited as in the movie, is Jim's dad. But I mean, everybody that knows this genre of film probably knows the story, because we've already kind of talked about the story in some of these other films. In fact, this is a very similar plot to Booksmart, except you have these high school guys, trying to get laid on prom night, trying to get laid before high school ends. They're all virgins. They're all buddies. Chris Klein is just perfect in this movie as the kind of like, shy, charismatic jock. Jason Biggs is the kind of like try-hard dork in the movie. Shannon Elizabeth got introduced to the world in this movie, at least to me. And bro, I don't know if I'd ever seen a hotter woman on screen before I saw her in this movie. She was so hot in this film, dude. And the whole the zeitgeist of American Pie today, 22, 23 years later, the word MILF, for example,
Right.
is an
Took the words out of my mouth.
entire it's its own world. MILF, DILF, whatever. That all started with this movie and a little throwaway thing that was in the script. A mom I'd like to fuck. And then here we are. Now there's whole genres of porn dedicated to that term.
I was about to say Lisa Ann has made her entire legacy off of that word.
Yeah, there you go. Yeah. So I just feel like its impact can't be understated. And on top of that, I love the movie. My little personal connection to this movie is I can remember going to see it in Greensboro. I graduated high school in '94, so I was in college when the movie came out. I had a lot of buddies that were my age that were in college with me. And I remember going to see this on opening weekend. It had a lot of buzz around it. It was before social media and all that. So it was just buzz, word of mouth type buzz. Mm-hmm. And we went to see it. And watching it now, it's almost hard to believe that I thought how funny it was back then. Because I can remember I was in fucking stitches when I saw this in the theater. Me and my friends were talking about it afterwards at the bar. We just couldn't believe how funny it was. And I don't know. I feel like it was this generation's Animal House, which didn't come up. So I think it's fair to mention that one now too as another piece of the foundation of this genre. But I feel like it was definitely a modernized version of Animal House, in the 80s. It kind of added a new element, added new modernized jokes and kind of up the ante a little bit in terms of where we were in the world in '99. But I love this movie for all the reasons I've mentioned. And you were mentioning soundtracks. This is another great soundtrack. I don't have it in front of me, but I can remember this being a killer soundtrack with a lot of great tunes on it. And I love American Pie 2 as well, the sequel. And even 3's okay. I mean, it's not the best, but it's okay. Stifler, iconic.
Absolutely.
You were talking about these side characters, right? I mean, he's one of the most iconic side characters for sure. But yeah, I want to hear what you think of American Pie, man. That's my number one.
American Pie was a lot so I was 12 when this movie came out, and it was absolutely forbade. I can't see it. And in many ways, there's that episode of The Simpsons where Bart's forbidden from seeing the Itchy and Scratchy movie and doesn't end up seeing it until he's 45. And that's kind of what it felt like. It just came and went, and I never really saw this movie until I was an adult and bought a DVD copy of it, a thrift store for $2. And I finally watched it, and by that point I had known all the big beats about it. I knew everything that had happened, and so it was kind of finally listening to a record in full that I had already heard all the songs on the radio at some point in my life.
Right.
But it was still exactly to your point. It's for this genre, that's one of the goalposts. That's it launched all those dudes. Well, with the exception of Chris Klein. I mean, he had a election to his name up at that point, but
he was also really good in that too. By the way, he has a knack for doing that kind of really subdued, kind of chill guy. Very charming, but not very outspoken. He has a knack for pulling that off.
Any of the movies where he's tried to do dramatic shit, you see why that really works for him. But yeah, Election and American Pie are perfect use of him. And
right,
yeah, man, it's I made the joke about Jason Biggs earlier. He's not really someone who's still prolific by any means, but this movie was such a game changer that all those dudes are still cashing checks off this and will be until the day they pass away. And
absolutely,
it's rightfully so. It has its place in history, and it's that's a very, very good pick.
Cool, man. Well, that's my one. I tell you what, Alex, we're going to take a quick promo break, and I'm going to check the comments over here on YouTube, too, see what the peeps had to say over there. When we come back, we'll wrap up our top fives for everyone and then give our honorable mentions. Okay, man? So sit tight. We'll be right back. All right, Alex, let me just see what the peeps are saying over here. Are you on the YouTube feed or no?
I'm not. No.
Okay. I couldn't remember if I gave you the link or not.
So
let's see. So Jason, the patron Nerdrovert, says American Pie gave us Boo Boo Kitty Fuck, which cracked me up when I saw that. He also said Sean William Scott walked so Chris Pratt could run. There you go.
I don't know. Has Chris Pratt made anything like Southland Tales yet? That remains to be seen.
Mm. You got Chris Yannies over there in the chat. What's up, dudes? Oh yeah, I forgot. I don't know if you know the Epic Film guys, right? You're familiar with
Oh
them.
yeah.
So Justin told a story when they reviewed American Pie. Chris Yanni just reminded me, but he claimed that he tried that to fuck a pie. So
Oh,
Justin from EFG, he told the world that. So he hasn't been able to live that down, obviously. We did it.
I've always been too much of a fat kid. There's no way I could do that to food. Like I'm sure
We didn't even talk.
I'm sure I have equally embarrassing stories, but I like food too much. I couldn't do that.
We didn't even talk about him fucking the pie either, but whatever, that's fine. Everybody knows about that, I guess. All right, man. So give me 5 seconds. So I'll come back in, and then I'll just have you wrap up your top 5. Okay?
Sounds good.
All right, guys. Welcome back. As I said pre-break, Alex from the Contrarians is here, first-time guest. It's been awesome discussing these raunchy sex comedies with Alex, and it was a great topic. I appreciate you pitching it to me, man. Now, why don't you go ahead and round out your top 5 and just let everybody know what you had? Just remind them.
For rounding out my top 5, I had Kingpin at number 5, Superbad at number 4, the 2012 underrated Bachelorette at number 3, Wet Hot American Summer at number 2, and number 1 was Road Trip.
Cool, man. Good list. My number 5 was Bridesmaids. My number 4 was Wedding Crashers. My number 3 was The 40-Year-Old Virgin. My number 2 was a very recent film, Booksmart. And my number 1 was American Pie, as we just discussed. All right, man. So I round out my top 10. I always bring 5 honorable mentions whenever I can. I could have had a lot more, though, truthfully. So I narrowed this down. I have 5 here. What about you, man? What honorables you got over there, buddy?
Yeah, same thing. I had to cut some out. I put in here a lot of like the telltale ones, but I really had to. So when we do these things, I have to remind myself this is my list, so I have to make it mine. So,
Yep.
Just count. Start back from 6.
Yeah, that's fine.
Okay, so picking up where you just left off, number 6, which was a hard one to cut, but it's American Pie 2.
Oh, okay.
I
Good
do.
one.
Yeah, I do have a lot of love for American Pie, but 2, the plot of it is, for whatever reason, more easily for me to relate to. My partying really took off in college, so watching that, it really was easier to relate to. Like I said,
yeah, great movie. I love the whole beach vacation vibe thing they got going. It's really good.
Yeah.
All right, what else you got?
Number 7. There's no way I could have made this list and not include it. It is The Hangover. Feel the way you will about The Hangover 2 or 3, but man. I worked at a movie theater when The Hangover came out. And I can tell you that movie was a cultural happening.
Yeah.
That was the thing of a lot of people thought it should have been nominated for Best Picture. I don't agree with that, but I just remember that the hype behind that movie was so huge and it was very real. That was also like the world really getting introduced to Zach Galifianakis. He had already been a fairly prominent comedian for a lot of people that were paying attention, but Bradley Cooper's amazing in it. You got the Mike Tyson cameo that I absolutely love.
Fucking Tiger, man. Yeah.
Absolutely. It's easy to pick holes since what basically raveled out in the aftermath with 2 and 3. But man, the first Hangover is just chef's kiss. Perfect.
Yeah, it really is good. I agree. All right. What else you got?
Number 8 is The Goods, starring Jeremy Piven, Dave Koechner, Ving Rhames, and Catherine Hahn. Again, a very underrated movie, in my opinion. It's just absolutely ludicrous about people that sell used cars. They're like sharks that are brought into different dealerships across the country to help, spike sales and whatnot. And you got Ken Jeong in there, a Will Ferrell cameo. James Brolin is this nasty old pervert in it. There's a lot of things to really enjoy about it, and some of the exchanges of dialogue are just wonderful. It's a movie I constantly recommend, and it's got the 38 Special "Caught Up in You" song that takes it out.
Such a good tune. Such a good tune.
Perfect.
This is another one similar to Bachelorette that you mentioned. This is another one that I've heard of, and I can in my mind see images and posters and shit of it, but I don't think I've ever seen it either. So I'm gonna have to do a double feature or something because I love those actors as well. So to check it out. Okay. Well, what else would have rounded out your 10 there?
Number 9, I had you mentioned earlier one of the pillars, if not the one that's most widely recognized, as Animal House.
Sure.
Obviously, was not alive to live through it, the fallout. I was not alive for the whole Jim Belushi thing, and or John Belushi, excuse me. And that's from a on-screen perspective, on film, that's his pinnacle right there. And he's great in it. You have, to me, one of the most accurate portrayals of being drunk ever in a film, when they're all singing Louie Louie together. I feel like that is way more accurate than like falling down and all the shit you typically see in movies, is just like waving side to side, belting out tunes to old songs. And
classic.
There's definitely stuff in that movie that would not play by today's standards, but it's still very enjoyable.
It really is. It really is a good watch. It's a lot of fun. It's a time capsule, but it's a lot of fun.
Mm-hmm.
All right, and you got one more, right?
I do have one more, and this is kind of a twofer because it mixes two of my favorite genres, which is the raunchy comedy and the Christmas movie, and that is Bad Santa, starring Billy Bob Thornton. Mm. It's not enough of a Christmas movie for me to make my little claim that, it doesn't qualify, but it's Billy Bob at his like absolute best, in my opinion, because he's a very underrated comedic actor. He's obviously, Sling Blade, he's an incredible actor, but you got Bernie Mac, I believe John Ritter's last performance, Octavia Spencer's in it, and all of them just have tremendous lines. It definitely tests the bounds of the word raunchy, but the adventures of Billy Bob Thornton and Thurman Merman and Christmas music accompanies it, so ain't no way I could hate on that.
Yeah, anytime you get to see Santa doing what he's doing in that movie, it's a good time, so that's a good pick. I didn't think about that one for this list, but that's a great pick. All right, well, to round out my top 10, I'll just list them here. So my number 6, Alex, I need your help, man. This would have been my number 1, but I got super in my head, and I'm like, I don't know if this qualifies. And I've talked about this movie so many times on my show and other categories that it's fallen into, but it's one of my favorite comedies of all time. So I decided to put in my honorable mentions, but it would have been Clerks and Kevin Smith. What do you think?
Oh, yeah, that's definitely it. It walks the line on the fence there.
I don't know. I mean, the humor, the like inappropriate humor or whatever you want to call it, is definitely there throughout, the script and throughout the movie, and the characters are very crass and that kind of thing.
Yeah.
But I just don't know that them getting laid is really the point of Clerks. So I was like, it didn't fit my personal criteria. I guess I could have gotten away with it, but I decided to throw it in my honorables and just, talk about it for a minute and see what you think of it. So
I respect that play.
It's my 6. Now my number 7, I know you don't like because you mentioned in the top, but it's Forgetting Sarah Marshall. It's another, Judd Apatow helmed piece here, and
it's a great movie. It's just,
I love it.
My criteria is so askew, but that's a great pick.
I mean, you got Jason Segel waving his dick around in this movie, slapping his, dancing naked, slapping his dick back and forth, and he's basically infatuated with Sarah Marshall, which we all are. Come on, she's forget it. And then you also have Mila Kunis, who's a divine goddess as well. She's really good in the movie. Russell Brand, who usually I'm not a big fan of, but I love him in this movie, and I love him in this role. Jonah Hill shows back up here. He has a small role in the movie. But yeah, I just love it. I love it's in Hawaii. Half of it's in Hawaii. Paul Rudd's back, yeah. I love half of it's in Hawaii, and then half of it he's doing this like weird like horror musical, which I really like too, the puppet musical thing. So yeah, it's a really like intricate story, but I felt like it somewhat applied, but I'm not as fond of this one as I am a 40-year-old virgin, so that's why this one's in my honorable mentions. My number 8. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
I was going to say, playing off of what you had mentioned, it's also very parallel with Road Trip in the sense that to me, it's the most perfect use of Russell Brand in a movie so far.
Oh yeah, for sure. Yeah, he really nailed that role for sure. It's almost like he was playing himself to a certain extent. And my number 8 is a movie I'm surprised didn't come up yet, but it's Van Wilder, National Lampoon's Van Wilder with Ryan Reynolds. You a fan of this one?
Yeah, it's that Ryan Reynolds, like, he was the runaway freight train at this point.
Oh man, I love how it's just Ryan Reynolds. It's just like him, like being funny and like, because even on Twitter he's fucking hilarious, like when he tweets out stuff. But he's just a funny dude. One of my favorite. We're talking about throwaway lines, but one that just always stuck with me with this movie is when he's making out with because he has a crush on Tara Reid, and that's like. They're like the two that are she's a wooden robot in it, but nevertheless, they're the two that are kind of
that time capsules it. Tara Reid being the heart.
That's right. That's right. But anyway, he's like making out with this other chick, right? And she walks in on him and storms off, and he's like chasing after her, and she's like, "Who was that? Was that a freshman?" And he was like, "Hey, she reads at a sophomore level." I just love that. I don't know why, but yeah. So Van Wilder would be my 8. My number 9 would be Old School. All right, you get these old dudes back on a college campus trying to relive the glory days. Vince Vaughn again popping back up. I love him. Another Todd Phillips film, by the way. Todd Phillips has got this genre on lock,
dominating the list here.
Yeah, for sure. But yeah, Old School was just a fun one because I remember it was unexpected at the time. Like I didn't expect what we were going to get, and there's some actors in that movie that I just love so much. Will Ferrell, Vince Vaughn, already mentioned. Alicia Cuthbert's in there. I love her. She's one of my all-time crushes. So yeah, that'd be my number 9. And then what do you want to say about Old School? Go ahead.
I was just going to say that throwaway line, something one of me and my buddies still use like in text exchange from that movie is the note that Will Ferrell leaves on the door for Mitch, how he ends it, "I love you." And he just like signs his name at the bottom.
Yeah, I love you. Yeah, it's good. And then let's round it out, man. My number 10 that made the cut, right at the cut, is Team America World Police.
Oh, that is a great pick.
Trey Parker, Matt Stone, their comedic just wit and genius. And, I mean, come on, man. It's puppets doing all this freaky sex shit and different. Oh, it is a trip to watch Team America World Police. And it is also satirical in nature, and it also has something to say, too, which I really like, which is often the case with like South Park episodes too. They kind of have these hidden meanings in there. So I really like when you're able to add that kind of like layer to those types of things too, where it's not just all stupid humor, there's something to it as well. So yeah, there you go. So that's it, man. So Alex from the Contrarians, you're the man, dude. Now what we like to do to wrap up the episode is we like to head over to Facebook and we shout out the fans and see what they had to say. You want to do that, man?
Let's do it.
Let's see what they had to say over on Facebook, buddy. So I just asked everyone, I said, what are some of your favorite raunchy comedies? And let's see. So Mario, patron and friend of the show, says Euro Trip, which is one that we did not mention. Are you a fan of that one? Is that the one with Stacy's mom or whatever? The song in it?
No, it's God, I can't even remember. Like Vinnie Jones is in it. We just did it recently on the podcast, and I can't.
Okay.
The girl who played Harriet the Spy in the Nickelodeon show back in the day. I can't remember her name.
I haven't seen
But
Euro
Julio
Trip literally in forever.
Loves that movie.
Oh, does he?
Julio
Okay.
Loves that movie.
Jared Taylor, patron and friend of the show, says he's got a couple throwbacks here. He says Blazing Saddles, Animal House, Porky's, Revenge of the Nerds, and American Pie. You're a little bit younger than me. You know all those, Alex?
Yeah, I've never been as big on Porky's as other people, but Revenge of the Nerds is a very solid pick. Blazing Saddles, that's an interesting one. The Mel Brooks genre, I felt was always one of like he just deserved his own category. But yeah, as we talked about already, Animal House and American Pie definitely staples.
Yeah, for sure. Michael Hill, friend of mine and patron as well, says Van Wilder, Friday, Wedding Crashers, Forgetting Sarah Marshall, and he mentioned Clerks. And he also says special mention for Euro Trip for having the catchiest song. Yeah, that's why I think that's the one where.
It's not. Yeah, I know what you're thinking now. It's not Stacy's mom. It's Scotty Doesn't Know. And
that's
Matt
it.
Damon's the guy that performs it. Yeah,
that's the one. Yeah. There was a Stacy's mom song though. I know that exists.
There was, and it is an earworm. It's by the band that did That Thing You Do. It's great.
All right, let's see. Drew Hallam says American Pie, Trailer Park Boys the movie. That's a good one. Super Troopers, Wedding Crashers, and Waiting. We didn't mention Waiting, but I'm in the food service business, and I used to be a server for many years, so that one has a special place. And Ryan Reynolds again. You like Waiting?
Yeah. It wasn't my favorite just at the time it came out, but at the same time as that, to piggyback on the Super Troopers, Beer Fest is also fantastic.
Oh, yeah, that is a good one.
So that would be in play as well. So, yeah, these are all good.
That is a good one. Top level patron of the show, Dan Roski, says Blazing Saddles, Fast Times at Ridgemont High. That's a good one. Mm-hmm. Clerks, Super Troopers, and Blockers. Oh, Blockers is the recent one with John Cena, right?
Yeah, that's a very recent pick.
I actually like that movie. I didn't think I was going to. I actually dug it. Being that you're a wrestling fan, did you like that one? I'm just curious.
Yeah, Yeah, it's I've for the past 15 years I was used to seeing John Cena as Superman, so seeing like some of the compromising positions he gets in that movie, that's what I
Yeah.
found entertaining about it. I was like, my main takeaway from that was it took The Rock a while to not take himself so seriously. So
Yeah.
to see that Cena's kind of already ahead of that curve, it made me happy.
Right. That's the one where he like beer pongs in his ass or whatever, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. No, I like that movie. I remember thinking, wow, this is actually kind of good. So I'm glad that one got a shout out. I did not even think about it for this list. Let's see. Joshua Michael over there. Here's his list. He says Road Trip, Animal House, Van Wilder, Revenge of the Nerds, 21 Jump Street, Super Troopers, and the first three Police Academies. All right.
Yeah. 21 Jump Street's a good call out. That movie was so much fun when it came out.
It really was. All right. Yeah. Oh, you got a Bad Santa shout out here. Doug McCambridge from Good Times, Great Movies says this is his least favorite genre, but he would say Bad Santa. So there
Nice.
you go. Chris Yaney, who's actually in the YouTube chat right now as well, so I'll see if he has anything else to say. But he says South Park, bigger, longer, and uncut. Team America, World Police. There you go. And Ted.
Mm-hmm.
So Ted is a good one. That's the teddy bear Mark Wahlberg comedy, right? Or am I thinking of something different?
No, that's correct.
That's right.
Anyone that's ever listened to our podcast knows I don't really enjoy acknowledging Seth MacFarlane's existence. So
All right, okay.
y'all can keep that one.
Yikes! Sorry, I'd forgotten that. I guess. Let's see what else we got. I want to see if there's any we haven't quite mentioned yet. So give me 1 second.
Mm-hmm.
Amanda Inman, a longtime friend and collaborator of mine, has an all-female list here. She's got Booksmart, Bridesmaids, Rough Night, and The Heat with Sandy B.
Oh, The Heat is good. I forgot all about that movie. That's a good call.
Yeah, man. Pete from Podstalgic says the Harold and Kumar films. He also
Absolutely.
says Hot Tub Time Machine and Plan B. I don't know if I know Plan B. Which one's that? Do you know that one?
I'm not familiar with it either, but Hot Tub Time Machine is a great call out.
Yeah, that's a good one. Dan Truly, patron of the show, says Sex Drive, The To-Do List, and Hot Tub Time Machine. You mentioned Sex Drive earlier. I don't think I've seen that one, to be honest.
Sex Drive is phenomenal. It's I don't remember the gentleman who played the lead, but it was, I think, 2009. Clark Duke is the really crass best friend in it. James Marsden plays the brother, like this super macho brother of the main character. And yeah, it's definitely worth seeking out.
Okay. And then to wrap up, patron and friend of the show, Joey Austin, says Bachelor Party, which I assume he means a Tom Hanks 80s film. And then he also says he's going to go ahead and mention The Big Lebowski. There's not a lot of sex and nudity, but they do say the F word 292 times.
Fair enough.
So nice little trivia there, I guess. That's good. Alex, this was a lot of fun, man. I really appreciate you coming up with this topic, and you've actually given me some homework. I'm going to probably watch a movie tonight, and I might message you on Twitter because I think I might try to find Bachelorette. Because I love those actresses. I think I might give that a watch like in the very, very near future and rank it for my June rankings because I've never seen it. Why don't you tell everybody a little bit about the Contrarians, man? You know, your buddy Julio's been on, and this is your first time, as I said, and I hope you come back real soon. But just tell them a little bit about your show and where they can look you guys up, man.
Yeah, absolutely. So Julio and myself comprise the Contrarians. We like to say we're right and you're wrong. What we do on the Contrarians is rage against the Rotten Tomatoes machine. Julio and I worked together for many years and would talk about how flawed the Rotten Tomatoes system is. So eventually one day we just had enough of it and started recording us talking about it. So we find a movie on Rotten Tomatoes that is highly rated, usually those certified fresh movies, and we make a case for maybe why it's a bit overrated, maybe some of the things the critics overstated about it, maybe the things they overlooked, maybe why it just should be taken down a peg or two. Mm-hmm. And then conversely, we'll find movies on Rotten Tomatoes, usually about 30% and below, those nasty green splotches known as rotten, and make a case for those films' positive merits and maybe some of the things that people overlooked and didn't give enough credit for. And that always comprises the first portion of our podcast, known as Contrarians Corner. In the second half of the podcast, we go to real talk, whereas we always break down exactly how we actually feel about the movie. Mm-hmm. Basically, the mission statement is to prove that art is subjective, and you can be over the moon or you can be critical of anything if you really work hard enough at it. But a lot of it has been finding out that, some movies that are really highly rated in Rotten Tomatoes really aren't that good. And, conversely, there's like our one we always go to, the Topher Grace movie from 2011, Take Me Home Tonight, which is like 11%. That is a perfectly fine movie that, for whatever reason,
Julio mentioned that movie actually when he came on my show. We did we did top 5 I think it was Good Bad Movies or something like that.
Okay.
Something to that effect, or movies that were so bad they were good or something. And he mentioned it in his top 5, and I've seen it. And I thought it was pretty good too. I was surprised it was 11%.
Yeah, that's the whole thing with Rotten Tomatoes, especially now. The further and further we get into it, and movies start using it for their marketing material. There's unfortunately just a lot of people that don't really understand what that system is. It's just people saying it's just like an amalgamation of reviews, and just
Yeah.
like an average. So anyway, that's what we do. We are thecontrarians.com is where you can find us on our website. Contrarian Prime, at Contrarian Prime on Twitter, at Contrarian Prime on Instagram, facebook.com/Contrarian Prime, and any site that you get your podcast from, the Contrarians. And myself, I talk about movies, but it's usually in between a lot of tweets about professional wrestling and food. That's at Contrarian Alex on Twitter.
Sure.
So I think that covers it, man.
Sure, man. I'll put all the information down in the show notes for all the listeners, too. If you guys want to check out Alex and Julio, please do that. They have a really cool show over there, and it's a cool concept. And Rotten Tomatoes it's becoming a thing. So they really they really tackle it, which I appreciate when I listen to that show. So give them a look, guys. Alex, I appreciate you being here, man, and hopefully I'll get to talk to you on the podcast again soon. Okay, brother?
Thank you so much for having me. This was a good time. Much appreciated.
All right, man. No problem. All right, guys. I will see you guys next week. We will be back with another top 5 and another P on the pod. Everybody take care. All right, Alex, let me end the live stream here.
Okay.